Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Our guest today is Alex Wisch. Alex is a peak performance and wellness coach who works with clients like professional athletes, Olympians, and CEOs on their physical health and their mindset. This type of coaching is often in the high-ticket coaching price bracket, and I think it's important that we hear from coaches who are charging a premium for their expert services. Among many other things, one of the topics we cover in this episode is how Alex intentionally targets the specific type of health consumer and makes sure they're absolutely the right fit for his services. There is so much to learn here from a veteran in our field. We love to see who's listening out there, so please take a screen grab of your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio. By the way, the show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of Health Coach Radio can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. At Health Coach Radio, we are 100% all about raising the voices of practicing health, fitness, and nutrition coaches and helping to drive this exploding industry forward. That's completely why we started this podcast. And our show is proudly brought to you by a school, Primal Health Coach Institute, an approved educational provider with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. Our graduates can become eligible to sit for the NBHWC credentialing exam to become a board-certified health and wellness coach. Our fall semester is off and running right now, and we're currently enrolling students for our spring 2022 cohort, which starts in early February. Please visit primalhealthcoach.com/level2 to learn more. And Laura will also share a little bit more about the course at the end of the show. We're excited to bring you this productive conversation with a successful, practicing high-ticket health coach. Please welcome Alex Wisch.
Joining us, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me.
We are thrilled to have you. Erin and I have taken a peek at your story, and we've chatted before we started recording about all the awesome stuff you have going on, which I want to get to all of it. But the starting place always is, let's start with where you came from. Do you mind giving us a little bit of backstory as to who you are and how you got here?
Sure. I'll break it down as easy as possible. So for me, when I grew up as a young kid, I battled with ADHD, had dyslexia, some learning problems. I was bullied for being overweight. And eventually, as that transformed going into middle school into high school, I transitioned more focusing on fitness and strength training. One, to give me confidence among my peers, and to give me something to focus on, something positive. When I moved forward with my life, going into college, I was very driven to race sailboats in the Olympics. I was training extremely hard. I was also very driven academically at a very top-notch school. And I had this idea that I had to get a 4.0 GPA. Like, it meant the world to me, which was this, idea that really, it's not really important in the long run at all. But what happened during my sophomore year is I hit a really strong burnout and I ended up crashing really hard. I tried sailing in nationals for sailboat racing, and I went out there, and it was the first time I was ever doing something like sailboat racing, something I absolutely love that reduces my stress, my anxiety. And I was out there just not wanting to live. I didn't have any life left in me. And at that point, I left school, and I was battling with very severe depression. And for about a decade of my life, I battled with very major depression, anywhere from been in the hospital a few times, was, really desperate to get better, different treatments, medications, something called ECT, ketamine therapy. Doctors gave me probably at the end of it, I probably had up to like 7 different diagnoses by the time I was going through the system, and was even on disabilities where doctors and practitioners are saying, Alex, like, you're not going to be able to hold a full-time job. This is the quality of your life, and this is what you have to deal with. And I hit a bit of a breaking point where I kind of really had to look in myself and understand that, look, there might be some medication out there or some treatment that could be helpful. But the reality is I didn't know if I was going to find this treatment or when I would find it. And so I had to look deeper in myself and understand, how can I empower myself as an individual, and what could I take control of my own life? And that's when I transitioned and looked towards, how can I optimize my sleep? Optimize my sleep and wake schedule, getting the right amount of sleep for myself, looking at my nutrition. What's the best type of nutrition for me that helps my mood? What can I cut out of my diet? For me, that was cutting out caffeine, other things that's in food, other kind of dietary restrictions I kind of worked around, looking at the whole mindset piece, having that positive outlook, that idea of gratitude, and community. I mean, community was huge. The people I surround myself with, the support, fitness. And so with all these different things, I basically was able to create this formula to drive my success moving forward. Got into personal training, and eventually that evolved into coaching, performance coaching, which worked with the physical and the mental piece, and start building my career one step at a time.
Yes. Okay.
Voila.
That is quite an epic story. And I mean, it's spectacular. It's sort of next level, training to compete in the Olympics is something that not a lot of us would ever have in our field of view. However, this is, when you boil it down, the health, sort of the health origin story. I had a health struggle, I had a personal struggle, and I came back from it, and now I want to share it with the world. So
Yeah.
that's familiar to a lot of us. So you are a coach. Tell us a bit more about your coaching practice today, and then we'll start to kind of flesh this out. So how do you coach people? Who do you work with?
Sure. So I work with definitely an assortment of different people. I think for me, one of my requirements is someone needs to be motivated and willing to follow instruction. All right. Because if they're not willing to follow instruction, then it's kind of a really challenging battle. But if they meet those two criteria, people I've worked with are, avid athletes all the way to Olympic bound athletes, entrepreneurs, professionals, people looking just to, get in shape and live the best quality life. Kind of like, I call them like life adventurers, and also like startups and even CEOs and executives that are trying to push that envelope to become that peak performer, where it's not just about achieving something once, but being able to create the sustainability and achieving over a longer period and throughout their life.
Okay.
Question.
Sure.
How do you identify if someone's motivated and willing to follow instructions? So other than just asking, hey, are you, I'm assuming that you flesh these people out, right? You have some sort of initial conversation that tells you, yep, this person's coachable. Yep, this person's ready. Because I personally know from personal experience, especially when I first started, and I know we have other coaches listening, people that are in our program, that especially in the early days, find themselves with clients that are not a good fit, that really don't have the motivation. They come to you and are willing to pay you money, but they're not willing to do what needs to be done. So I'm going to shut up now. I asked a question. I would love for you to answer that. How do you ferret that out?
Well, one thing I'm going to say is, this is something I think that I'm still working at. But I'm a very, very blunt person. I mean, when it comes to also the goal setting piece, like, there's someone that wanted to work with me, and they wanted to be, next 30 under 30 on Forbes. And I honestly told them that it's going to take a couple of years. They weren't going to be there. And that's not what they wanted to hear. And they didn't want to work with me then. And that was fine. I'm very honest of what I think. I always know people can get better and improve, but I try to create a realistic timeline. With people, I'll ask them, like, when they have certain goals, like where's their motivation, 0 to 10. And I might ask them, like, okay, like I might give them a scenario and say, like, does this sound reasonable of a commitment level? I also kind of look at their past, because what someone's been able to do in their past, and it might not be something incredible, but when it comes to either consistently working, even with a job, or if they've had a background of being an athlete and training for something, or whatever it is in life, that they've shown that they have committed some sort of time towards something professional, or even academic, or something that shows a little more grounded. And then there's some people that honestly we have a really good connection, a lot of positive energy on the call, and I take a chance. But sometimes even after a few weeks go by, it just doesn't work, and we have to have an honest conversation with each other.
Been there. Well, so it's interesting because you started that by saying this is something I need to work on myself because I'm a little blunt. But the way I interpreted everything you just said is that you're very discerning about who you do and don't work with, which every coach should be. And the sort of the feeling that I got when you were describing this sort of multifaceted process, like I'm very honest, I offer realistic timelines, I gauge their commitment level, I ask them about times when they were committed to something like this before. Like this is all discovery. This is what I would encourage every coach to do. Like get really clear on who you do want to work with and who you don't want to work with, and then just go after those people. Sometimes I think coaches think that they're just the passive recipient of clients. Like I'll just take who I can get, but it's like, no, let's step into this and be really intentional about who we do and don't work with. So I just got a real good, strong sense of intention from that. I don't think it's a bluntness, a character assessment that you need to apologize for per se.
There's something I was going to share too, is the, along with that, the positive energy is super important. Yes. So I know a lot of people, money's important. We need to make money. We need to pay for food, living, all the above. And in some of those situations, I find that, coaches will then just bring on anyone and anybody they get. But what I find is that when you are a little more picky with who you choose and you pick the people that really make you feel good after a session, create that positive energy between the two of you, it's going to inspire you to be the best coach you can be. And you're going to retain clients even more and love your job more, which is going to help more with sustainability.
I completely agree. Mm-hmm. The energy thing is interesting. And so I was thinking, as you were sharing that, like when I get on the phone with a prospective client, I'm listening for an energy connection as well, a little bit different than you. I work with different people than you do, obviously. But if I get a sense that a person has a moderate to high level of self-awareness, they know when they're making supportive decisions, unsupportive decisions, they know what the consequences of actions are. And they're just giving me sound bites that make me believe that they have a mm-hmm. decent level of self-awareness. I'm like, I'm in, let's do this. Yep. They could be my perfect client on paper, but if I'm not getting that energy, and on the flip side, they might not seem like a perfect client on paper, but if I get this self-awareness and this desire to improve and know themselves better, I'm totally in. The energy piece is important.
Yeah, I don't know 100%. About you, but the big red flag for me are people that tend to blame others. People are coming to me for help, but how they got into the situation they're in isn't their fault. There's a myriad of other, like there's this sense of laying blame. And I'm not saying they should blame themselves. I'm just saying people should be able to look at a situation, or this is what I might be looking for, as someone who I think is ready for change, as someone who's kind of willing to let go of the blame of all this. And these are the circumstances, and this is kind of how I got here, and I need help fixing it, because I find a lot of times if I bring people on that have a tendency to have blamed other people for where they're at, that's a really hard, I don't personally feel equipped to change that. A lot of times I have been less successful than I have been successful with people that are in that frame of mind. Are there any kind of red flags for you, triggers, phrases, tendencies in a conversation that have you thinking, yeah, probably not someone who's ready?
Yeah, I was going to say, the blame thing, I fully agree with, not taking responsibility. I also find that, depending on the environment they're in, if the environment is really, really challenging, they're unwilling to change their environment. Yep. When I propose that, then that can be really defeating. Because if someone wants to get healthy, fit, and right now they're drinking and doing drugs, which, I've talked to a lot of professionals that are drinking and doing drugs, but they're not willing to change the people they're hanging out with. Like, it's just going to be an upgoing battle, 100%.
Oh my gosh. So true. If you don't mind, I'd love to kind of dig into a little bit of when you were telling your story. I was writing this down. That's why I was kind of looking away a little bit. That the path that you went on over that 10-year period of that severe depression you were talking about, and being hospitalized and reliant on medication. And then you articulated a change in what sounded to me like a change in mindset somehow, that what can I do to help serve myself? Is this something, can you pinpoint, I guess, something that gave you this aha moment that, hey, maybe if I rely on myself? Were you working with somebody, a therapist of somehow that kind of put that kernel into your own brain working with a coach? Or was this just something happened or you woke up one day and had this aha moment? I would love for you to articulate a little bit, if you don't mind, what made that switch for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's a little more of a gut wrenching little story, but I was over. So during this time, I didn't have any money, and I didn't really have a home to go to, and I was in a residential facility out in Brewster, New York. And this was a place that was actually shut down by the Board of Mental Health because of severe mistreatment to patients, and I was stuck there, and I was not in a good place. When I was there and realized, how much I was being mistreated, and I didn't really find a way to get out, and I felt, like I had no power in my situation, I actually found myself standing on top of a bridge that was standing over a railroad track. And I stood there looking at the railroad track and thought, I had two options. I guess actually three. I could either stay in this living hell that I'm currently in, which I didn't know I just couldn't survive there any longer. I could jump, end it all, which of course I didn't because I'm here today, or I could do something right now, and it had to been something extraordinary to make a difference and take a chance. And that's when I literally, at that moment on, I walked like a few hours. I got my bike. It was the only thing I owned at the time. And like it starting at 8 p.m. at night, I rode my bike until 4 a.m. in the morning through the boondocks of like New York, with a little pay-as-you-go phone and like a printout of like, and this didn't have maps on it. This wasn't like a Droid. This was like a little pay-as-you-go phone and like a little printout of a map, how to get to this hospital called Four Winds, which was like a more of a holistic kind of outdoor hospital for mental health, that accepted my insurance at the time. And I literally traveled down these dirt paths. And, when I was traveling, it was like almost like Texas Chainsaw Massacre land. Like you see a house every so often. Like it was very bizarre. It had no signs on any of the roads. I mean, it's all woods. And I was riding my bike, and all of a sudden what first happened, the chain broke. But I still kept the bike with me and rode it down the hills. I didn't want to let go of my bike because it's the only thing I own too. And I was like, I have to hold on to my bike. I'm not going to ditch it. And then I was riding too. Then I got a flat tire, and I still carried my bike with me. But I ended up at this hospital at 4 a.m. in the morning. And then from there, I was able to get help. I actually called and reported the place I was staying at, which actually eventually got shut down by the Board of Mental Health. But, I took a big chance, and I found that the energy inside myself at a place where I was at my absolute lowest. And I was able to do this and get to where I need to go and create a catalyst. And that's where that change happened. And getting there is able to get into a better environment. Like I said, if you're stuck in that environment, that's horrible, it's going to hold you down. But I was able, the biggest thing I was able to do is change my environment. And once I changed my environment, I could get more mental clarity and then figure out the next proper steps, how to get out of New York back to Boston.
Yeah. Yeah. That sort of story of feeling powerless, disempowered, but then just finding some little nugget of like, the worst case scenario, I take a chance here and ride my bike through a scary part of the world and do something better. I think that a lot of people, like, just like this is again, I think this idea of feeling powerless can really consume people. People will get into the spiral of disempowerment and feel like there's no way out. So something about you that you were able to kind of, even in a very, very dark moment, recognize that there's something I can do here. Maybe there's something I can try. Do you think that's part of your nature, or do you think that could be coaxed out of anybody?
So the ability is, let me try to reframe this, the ability to try something and just put yourself out there.
Yeah. When you feel completely disempowered, like you are at rock bottom, ground zero, whatever we're going to call it, some folks think this is it for me. I think a lot of folks do, like, well, that's it for me. I mean, but you were at that point and you thought, maybe there's something I can do. Is that inherent, natural to your character, do you think?
I don't know. That situation is such a unique situation. I mean, what I tell and what I work with my clients is, if you're in a situation, and I'm going to use depression. If I'm working with someone who's depressed, or some people hit a low point, and there is something that they can potentially do to better themselves, I ask them, okay, is that alternative? Is that something you could do? Is that going to make your situation worse? And if the answer is no, and it has even the slightest chance of making your situation better, then, I try to help them realize that and see that like they should at least take that chance, because you're already at that low, like things can't get any worse.
Right.
So you might as well take a chance and try something.
This is a great example, I guess, of just coaching cues on how, as coaches, we can work with people to take the step that's going to move them in the direction they want to go, right? Being able to help them, especially someone dealing with depression, which is, God, my poor husband, I talk about him all the time. How about it, Erin? Like he has suffered from anxiety his entire life, ADD, ADHD, often bouts of depression. And the one thing that works so well for him and why I love him and all of this is because he is that kind of person that will get down in the dumps, but one small thing that provides success that boosts confidence gets him on a roll, and he's willing to do it. Right. So from a coaching perspective, this is, and again, in my opinion, and maybe you can give me yours because I'm sure you've been through therapy. This is, I think, a fantastic opportunity for a coach that might be dealing with someone who's got mental illness. We are not therapists. If you're working with someone who is mentally, they really need to be working with a licensed therapist. But from a coaching perspective, this is where we can help support them, is have these conversations about, because fear is a big driver, I think, when you're not a big driver, but a big part of depression and anxiety. My husband, Brad articulates this as always being afraid of what's next and the what if, rather than focusing on what's here in the moment and what I can do about it now. And I think this is a phenomenal place where health coaches can step into this to bring a sense of empowerment to our clients that are in this position. For you, you were in the wrong place, dude. And you had to do this for yourself, right? The choices. I mean, I think you were kind of at a place where the worst case, you were already facing the worst case scenario, which was I could end it now, or I could give this one more shot, So what a phenomenal story. And I think so many people can relate to situations in their lives, maybe not that big, but they're kind of already facing their worst case scenario. And I totally, like, as far as my little story about moving into health coaching was not like I could die right now or I could take a step, but it was, my worst case scenario is that I continue in this job that sucks my soul. Right. That's not going to go away. I can always find some job that I hate that sucks the soul out of me, or I could take a step and sort of move in a direction. So I think this story that you related can be applicable to both coaches working with clients, but also coaches that are a little afraid to kind of take a next step, So I guess kind of bundled up in here, and what I would like for you to elaborate on are maybe some of the tools or the strategies or skills that you work with people that are kind of in this crossroads situation.
Sure.
That coaches can kind of take and try to implement or try themselves.
Yes. So there's something interesting you said. So you kind of talked about these people like David Goggins or people with these huge, huge goals, and even things that, I've strived toward, or other people strive for that are really big. The only thing that differentiates them between somebody who hasn't achieved that big goal is the small steps along the way. Mm-hmm. If someone is running, let's say, an ultra marathon, right? They don't just start at step one and jump all the way to the end of the ultra marathon. It's made up of each individual steps. And the only thing that makes them, in that situation, getting to their goal is that they're able to string together all those steps to run the distance ultra marathon. So it's not that you're people, anyone's capable of taking those individual steps. It's just a matter of getting and building up that mental momentum to continue those steps and keep them moving forward. So when I talk to people, like, I don't believe any two goal is too outlandish or too big. And you just need to focus on the small little steps and piece by piece and really break it down to that granular level to understand each little success along the way, mm-hmm. and build off those, get the momentum, get the energy, get the confidence. And then eventually, before you know it, you hit that larger goal. And I've done a lot with that with myself personally in my career, and what I've done along the concept of marginal gains, which is, getting those small little changes on a day-by-day level that eventually leads to exponential growth. I mean, I didn't come from being on disabilities to all of a sudden, having a successful career as a coach and doing other things I do overnight. It took months and it took years. but I did get there. But it was all from stringing together each little individual step and trusting the process.
Yeah, big time. I wonder if you ever encounter impatience from your clients, because I do. I work with people who are kind of working on their metabolic health and probably have some weight they want to lose. And this happened actually last night. I had a client who had a great week, just a great week, achieved the goals that we set out, was feeling good, feeling motivated, feeling positive. I said, okay, how do you feel about this for an upcoming goal? What if you just did that again? What if you just did that again? Because I think if you strung together 2 weeks with this effortless sort of thing happening for you, that would be a really big, a real big dial mover just based on this client's goals. And the client was kind of pushed back because she wanted to do something more. I'm like, more, I want more, I want more, I want more. She wanted to get to that sort of next step faster. And I don't know, do you ever find that you get clients that are impatient with that sort of marginal gains approach?
I find that, people, including myself and people I work with, definitely get impatient. There's something, it took me a long time to understand this, but when I broke down and looked at, how to become successful and sustainable, not just once, but over a long period of time, what I actually found out is that you need to master the art of maintenance. And people, like, when I mentioned this, people are like, what are you talking about? I want to progress. And I'm like, no, you have to understand, if you can master maintaining where you're currently at, you will at the end be ahead of everyone else. Because so many people are so fixated on a plan A, and plan A is like progression. And if they can't hit progression, then it's like drop off. It's like, I do nothing, right? But life is not like that. We have pandemics, we have, children get sick, family members get sick, life stressors from work, and there's going to be times we can't progress. But if you know the absolute minimal you need to do in order to maintain, during those hardship times, you hit maintenance, you plateau, and then when you're ready to take off again, you progress. Right. So in my eye, like, helping someone recognize, being like, hey, like, maybe you didn't lose weight, but guess what? You figured out the formula of how to maintain your weight. Like, that's good. Like, you didn't gain weight. Like, that's actually a success. And so developing the plan A and the plan B has actually been really essential for helping my clients and helping myself tremendously.
Oh my gosh. That's so smart. I love this. Master the art of maintenance. Super great. Because I always, I have this bratty soundbite that I use because we talk a big game about consistency, yeah, sure. But my soundbite is, well, actually inconsistency is key, because life is super inconsistent. And if you're geared up for this consistency, sorry, but life's going to throw some freaking roadblock up in your way. So you just better get okay with chilling out for a bit, maybe having that inconsistency, just accepting it. So mastering the art of maintenance. I'm gonna have to steal that one.
Yeah. I mean, don't you think if you're always in pursuit of something better, you're never really happy with where you're at, and it's exhausting? That there is something to be said for enjoying where you are for a while and learn how to identify with where you are now. This is me, because here's one thing I have found with some clients, and I think it describes me a little bit too, is during times of strife or stress or some sort of negative emotional feeling, I have a tendency to revert back to who I was when I wasn't at where I want to be, just mentally. That identity is still in my brain sometimes. And I have to remember, no, I've lived here. I've been this for 10 years and owned this for 10 years, so that, I think if we're constantly always moving forward and never just being grateful for and living in, literally marinating in this success for a little while and practicing being here so that this is now the baseline and you can always go up from here. That's kind of what I sort of interpreted by what you were saying, Alex, is that plateau is not a bad place to be. It's you sort of getting like comfortable with your new circumstances before 100%. Kind of moving on, and, I heard you talking about how, and I'm wondering if, the trajectory of your story and finding this new place to call home that was more natural. Was this kind of where you found the connection between like how you're eating, moving, the exercise, all these other components from a health perspective, and how that sort of impacts everything else for you from I heard you mention that you value this and something that you work towards. Is that where you found that connection, or through working with kind of a more sort of natural community? Was this something that you arrived at yourself through your own research, trial and error? Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah. I wouldn't say there's one answer. I'd say it's definitely a combination of all the above.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's really interesting, there's something that I'm a huge advocate of, and it's the idea of a growth mindset. And I think me being in a growth mindset as a practitioner is extremely important. That means regardless of, if I have a client that excels where I need to, or they don't, or if I felt like I did a good job in that regard or I didn't, or my own goals, if I hit them or I didn't, I use something where I never lose, because either I win or I learn.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as I'm learning something from working with that person or from that community you talked about, or from my own experiences, and I learn something, then it's a success and I can move forward and definitely progress. Another piece that you're kind of talking about with those holistic steps, there's something else I really help teach my clients, and it's mastering the art of the basics. There's a lot that happens, I find, is that there's way too much information out there and people make things way too complicated.
Right.
And I go back to there's a famous Olympic wrestler named Gable, and he was multiple gold medals. And what made him the best wrestler was that he knew 3 moves, but he knew how to hit these 3 moves from every angle, every direction, and any position he was in. So, and that's the same philosophy I do with myself as I do with my clients. It's like not just learning how to do good sleep, but how do you do good sleep when you're in a noisy environment, or you're not at your home, or you're on travel? How do you eat healthy? But how do you eat healthy on the go when you're on traveling or on vacation? It's being able to hit those basic elements, but when you're out of your element or you're in a different situation, and just mastering those basics from all angles, I think is the number one thing that someone should learn before they start making things and really a little too complicated.
Gosh, I love this conversation because I just think anybody who's listening who's maybe new to coaching or aspiring to be a coach probably has a preconceived idea of what coaching is, and might believe that it's a teacher-student paradigm, boss subordinate thing where I'm the leader, I'm the person who knows all the stuff. I'm going to teach it to you and you're going to go do it. And it's just not. It's really getting granular on the basics. I love that you mentioned the growth mindset thing, because I think a lot of folks understand this, or heard of it, or read the book or whatever, understand the concept of a growth mindset. And yes, you want your clients to have a growth mindset. And as a coach, you also must have a growth mindset. So you can lead from beside your client, not out in front of them. And so this is just such great, to me, this is coaching mastery kind of 101. And anybody who's new to coaching, listen up, because this is how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'd love to maybe shift to some of the stuff you're doing now, because, we talk about your origin story and what got you into coaching, but then your coaching practice has really evolved. Like there's a lot of things going on now. So you're still working with clients. These are these high performing clients, high ticket price point. I'm thinking we can talk about that if you're open to it. And you have a lot of other stuff going on. So let's talk about what you're coaching, what your practice, what your life, what your whole thing is. I know there's a lot, because we were talking about it off air before we pressed record. I mean, you were telling us a story about how you've learned so much from your clients, such that you've kind of been able to get into this startup space a little bit. And you've got some of these major fitness crazy pursuits you've been doing to raise awareness. And there's just so much going on. So let's talk about how this has evolved for you.
Sure. Well, the beginning of this evolution it started when I was coming out of my depression. I could start there. During my depression, I was anxious. I had opportunities come my way, and I said no to all of them. I mean, there was a time where I was really depressed. I was on my computer, but I wanted to do something. And I was putting a lot of outreach about like personal training, but I wasn't even personal training at the time. And then someone came to me saying, "Hey, Alex, can you set up, personal training at all the top country clubs in like the East Coast area?" And like the person asked me, they got a phone call, but like I never followed back up because I was like, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I don't know what I'm doing. And after I went through all this, I got to a point where I'm saying, no matter whatever someone asks me, I'm going to say yes. I'm just going to say yes. And, there's a chance I'm going to flop, but if they're asking me, then they believe I can do this. So I should also believe I can do this. So when I started working with clients, I had a bunch of different asks. And this kind of began in the beginning. Like one client asked me to help sell some of their real estate, these two 80,000 square foot warehouses, to create like a ninja gym or rock climbing gym. And I actually helped make the connection to help make that happen, which brought in a good amount of money that I was able to leverage later on in my career. But along the journey is when I met with different people and I started working with venture capitalists, VCs, and they invest in startups, they raise a lot of money. When I worked with these people and started training them and coaching them, I would find that balance of being able to kind of pick their brain a little bit and learn what I could from them to make them feel good, but knowing that limit of how much it could actually access their knowledge while making sure they're getting a quality session.
Right.
And then sometimes I'd seek out different clients to train because I actually wanted to learn more about them and develop a relationship to expand my ability to invest or advise companies. In the VC world, when I started working with them, they brought me into pitches for startups. They asked my opinion in the fitness career about like, what do I think about this company? Do I think it's going to be successful? And then through that experience, I liked some of the companies and they liked me and I started advising them. And so that means I'd be meeting with them for like an hour, maybe like every other week. And they'd give me equity in the company. And you negotiate some type of deal, or sometimes they pay you. And kind of out from that, I invested in some of the companies. So I do it alongside what I'm currently doing. And then that also leads to other opportunities because some of these people, these companies I'm advising, there's CEOs, there's executives, there's people under a lot of stress, and I can also coach them too. So what I do is I try to make sure everything is synergistic in some way. It's all in the same industry. There's some type of synergy. And then outside of that, I wanted to, on the mental health side of things, that had a story and I felt very comfortable about where I got to in my life. I wanted to share my story more with the world. And, I do work with very, high price ticket individuals that are spending a certain amount of money, but I wanted to have a bigger outreach. I wanted to also help people that, couldn't afford me or that needed my help and didn't have access to me. So I started doing these big fitness feats to inspire other people, being like, look, like no challenge is too big, like set a big goal. It doesn't matter if you can finish it or not, like go out there, inspire people and learn. So like last Memorial Day weekend, I did this 20-pound vest, 1,000 strict pull-ups, 2,000 push-ups, 3,000 squats. I started training for it in December. I had no clue if I could do this. I was like, I literally like set this goal and I just stuck to it, each day after day and didn't think about the big goal. The week of, I actually got an injury and I couldn't do any training the week of, but I ended up finishing the goal and did an amazing job and worked with Spartan Race. And we were able to have a great live on Instagram and inspire a lot of people and raise a lot of money for veterans and mental health and have a bigger outreach. And now I'm doing more kind of fitness feats like that. But it all kind of brings synergy. It's also different ways to promote yourself, get the message out there. People know who you are. People are able to build trust in you, understand your character, understand what your message is. But it is synergistic in one way or the other. And that's what's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that sounds like Murph on steroids. I don't know if you, anybody who's familiar with CrossFit knows that workout, but that's 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats. You did a 10x of that. Yeah. And it took you how long?
6 hours and 8 minutes. And right. Those were strict pull-ups. No kipping.
No,
100% strict.
Oh my God. So sorry, I'm going to geek out for a second. Did you do literally 1,000 pull-ups all at once, or did you break that up somehow in like sections?
Well, so I'll split this. The original plan actually was doing the Murph times 10. Okay. And then there got some complications. Actually, 3 days after I decided to do this feat, I actually tore an abductor in my lower abdominal muscle. So I was like, and this is where also in life as a coach or teaching your clients, it doesn't mean you have to give up what your goal is. Sometimes you just have to change directions a little bit. So and I'm happy I actually cut out the running, because I think that would have been just way too much anyway.
Yeah.
But so then originally after that, I was like, I want to do 1,000 strict pull-ups, 2,000 push-ups, 2,000 squats, like one after the other. And I was like, I'm going to do Guinness Book World Records, all this. Lo and behold, to do something with the Guinness book is like thousands of dollars. So that was going to happen. But that would have taken a lot longer. So what I ended up doing is like an EMOM style, which was like HIIT training.
Mm-hmm.
And I did like, it was 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 10 squats. And I kept that going every minute on the minute for 15 minutes. Then I'd take like a 2-minute break.
Mm-hmm.
And then as time went on, like I might take in more breaks, like one break every 5 minutes, way later on in the event. And then the pull-ups dropped down to like 3 pull-ups. But yeah, eventually I ended up finishing, and my pull-ups, my push-ups, my squats looked just as good at the end as the beginning, which again, like it was just, I trained my butt off for that. And one thing I was going to note with my training and what I learned a lot is that, you know, one thing with fitness in general, and I tell people this, you don't get stronger in the gym. And people are like, what are you talking about? You get stronger with recovery.
Right.
So this event was all about being able to train, but knowing how to maximize recovery, because my training sessions were hard. And recovery goes with whether you're into fitness or you're a professional, like mental recovery too, from hard working days.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a journey. And it was very exciting.
But the reason I was asking you that question is because boy, is that just like, what a big, back from my sales days, hairy ass goal to try to hit, right? A bass is what we called it. Big, hairy ass. Yeah. So anyway, the reason I wanted to ask you that is kind of how you trap that down is, you know, we see this with both our own health coaching clients, but also coaches that have this goal they're trying to achieve that seems so far away and so enormous. And just the thought of all the work that has to go into actually achieving that sometimes stops people in their tracks from actually doing it. But you don't have to necessarily, first of all, it doesn't have to all be at once, doesn't have to be all gangbusters. You can change how you're getting it accomplished on the fly as you're going through and situations change, right? So that was kind of like why I asked you that question, like, how did you get it accomplished? Because that was just one example of someone who has, hey, I'm going to go big or go home. I've got something I want to highlight, right? Mental illness, depression that I want to be able to raise money for, raise awareness of, but to get people's attention, I got to do something big, right? Set it. And then I'm like, how am I going to accomplish it? How is this actually going to get done? And being able to go in it with a game plan, but be willing to not necessarily commit to that because otherwise it's a failure. Being able to change on the fly to adjust to the circumstances that you're in at the moment to kind of get you closer with each and every step. So anyway, that was the reason I asked that question. So thank you for that. And interestingly enough, you said by doing this, now you actually ended up being able to partner with Spartan races. Like every action people take, right, moving closer to their goal and thing they want to do, it's amazing to me the ripple effect that has and the connections that you can make and the opportunities that can come your way just by taking a step, 2 steps, but you know what, in this case, just doing something big, just go for it.
Yep.
You know, I just absolutely love that. So how did I heard you mention kind of working with these venture capitalists. I got to imagine there's a way that you got connected to, because this is a question that we get a lot, right, Aaron? Like if I know there's a direction that I want to go, but how do I actually gain entry into that space? How do I meet these people? What kind of questions or what kind of tips or advice can you give people that might have aspirations for something that at the moment they don't have the resources for or the connections to?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing I do, and I've done a lot during the pandemic, a time where, you know, social connections have been more challenging. Mm-hmm. I do a lot of reach out on LinkedIn. I connect and do 20-minute calls with a lot of different people in a lot of different industries. And whether they're VCs, whether they're investors, startups, or people like this week, I talked to a woman named Joy, who was she was like by Forbes, the #1 female entrepreneur from the Middle East. Wow. I talked with her just because I wanted to learn like what made her so successful. I reach out to these people, share a little bit of like why I'm passionate to learn from them. And I'll set up like 5 of these calls a week with different people. And I have to reach out to a lot of people to get some people. But then by reaching out to them, by them meeting you and understanding who you are as a person, your character, they then will offer other connections. So that's been a really big thing. Just going out, putting yourself out there, willing to, some people aren't going to want to meet with you. That's fine too. But you'll hit some people that are, and you'll definitely create like a spiral effect with connections. If you're looking to particularly get involved with like helping startups or advising startups, and you feel like you've had some experience, I think experience is really essential here though. Like you've had some experience in industry over a period of time, or you know it. You don't have to know it that well, but you have some experience. There's something called accelerators or incubators where they work with a lot of different startups. And if you reach out to them, and you can reach out to them on LinkedIn. It's a great place to reach out to them. They're always looking for experts in certain industries to come on and mentor these people in different that are in fitness, in mental health, in different places that are always looking for those additional expert opinion.
Oh, thanks for plugging LinkedIn. That's come up a couple times now, right, Aaron? There's a lot of people that are so focused on like Facebook or Instagram for lead generation, right? And to get a following. But the 2 platforms that I think get sort of brushed by the wayside. We had someone who built his entire business on Twitter, actually, but I'm hearing more and more LinkedIn, and it might not necessarily be direct client acquisition, but connections is huge. Huge, especially if you want to be in, I'm sorry, Aaron, that corporate or business space.
That's what I was going to say. Like, hey, if you're looking for that high performing, high ticket client, they're probably on LinkedIn. They're probably not on
100%.
TikTok. Real. Yeah. I was thinking the same thing when you name drop LinkedIn. It's like, dang it, freaking LinkedIn. I just think it's an untapped market. But what I also heard you say, like, and for some people listening, the idea of reaching out to people on LinkedIn probably makes them just like their skin crawl. But this goes back to like saying yes to things, but this is like taking it to the next level. Not only saying yes to things, it's like, I'm just going to go out and ask for things. And, whatever, worst case scenario, they ignore me or block me. That's okay. But I love hearing stuff like this, because it's almost makes you feel like there's limitless potential to find and connect to anyone in the world that might be you want to have in your orbit, whoever that might be. I just really appreciate that from you. So thank you.
There's also one thing about me is I'm very persistent. If there is somebody, if there's somebody I want to get in touch with, I don't care who they are, like I'm going to be persistent, sometimes to the point where it might get a little annoying, but I'm at least going to try to get some response from them, to have them at least acknowledge that I exist before I feel like I give up. I think it works more times than others because they understand how persistent I am. And sometimes it doesn't work, but like, I like putting the full effort in before I kind of give up trying to reach out to somebody.
What a great message.
So, yeah. And I want to ask you how you do it, because I've been reached out to on LinkedIn, which
Sure.
up until recently, I thought was one of the more like sketchy social platforms, because it's like,
really?
I don't know. Anyway, I've had some weird private messages on LinkedIn. But what I would like to know, but you get out on Instagram too, like, hey, let's do this collab. And it's so obviously copy and pasted. They obviously have no idea. Like I must get 5 a week of fitness clothing brands that want to collab. Yeah. It's like, did you even look at my feed? I refuse to do gym selfies. I will not I won't do it anyway. So like when you're reaching out to people, like, is there, how do you do it? Like, do you know enough about them? So you do a little deep dive, figure out what they're about, what they're working on, and then slide into their DMs with at least something pertinent and specific to them. So do you do a little bit of like homework before you hit them up, or what do you do?
I think what actually really helps my success level with LinkedIn is my own profile. I think one thing before you go do this is really spend time to build out your profile, make it look really professional. Write in, whatever experience you have, include all your certs you have, whatever it is, and, make it substantial. So when people do see your profile, there's something interesting. Like mine says, it mentions something about like, I'm a flow coach also, which I decided like I do some coaching in flow, like the idea of like that optimal level of productivity. And there was a point where I kind of transitioned my title from that, but when I reached out to people, people are more curious to know what flow coaching is than anything. So they actually are like, I want to connect with you because I don't know what flow coaching is. So I just left. So I just left it in my profile. I'll be like, okay, this sounds like it's good. I've done a combination of the two. Well, I actually have 3 different ways I kind of reach out to people, and it was a progression. I was doing the individual reach outs originally, and there is some individual reach outs can be good. I ended up then using something called Cleverly, which does some automated reach outs. I mean, you want to make sure your reach out response is not something that's very generic. It needs to be a little more personal, or share something personal about yourself or what you're passionate about or why you want to connect, but you want to not really do something very generic. And then if they don't respond in certain amount of days, it does a little follow-up. So I've done a bit of both. Eventually, I actually hired I have my own virtual assistant that does a lot of my reach outs for me. So she does a little homework, like for the higher ticket individuals I want to reach out to, and gets to know them a little better, and does some personal reach outs on my behalf, just because it can be a little time consuming. But it was a little combination of all the above.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, but what great advice across the board, regardless of the type of reach out, whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's other people, like sending emails to people. I mean, this comes up a lot when we have folks that are very curious about, say, like corporate wellness and corporate coaching, corporate wellness coaching, and how you get an audience. And, we've repeatedly said, I mean, and I heard you say it, you've got to reach out to a lot of people to get just a few or even one. But that's the nature of what that's like. But the good news is you don't need everybody to
100%.
say yes. You just need one to get started. And then that group, you got to do the job, right? And you got to do it well. And then chances are you've got not only a testimonial, but hopefully recommendations and referrals that you can sort of move into. So what else, what's on the horizon for you? What are you working on now? Like, what's next?
Well, I mean, one thing on a personal I'm working on is trying to not get too spread out. I went from that idea of saying yes to everything, realizing that what is it? Jim Carrey? Yes. What is it called? It's called yes.
Yes, man.
Yes, man. Yeah. I turned into that for a moment, and my life got a little too chaotic. But I started to hit like this maximum threshold level. So now I'm at a place where I'm kind of pulling myself a little back in. But what is next? So on the next, I have a big fitness feat coming up. The goal is January 2nd. I decided to do something that kind of means a lot to my heart, where I built my original community that helped pull me out of my depression was a place called Brooklyn Boulders in Somerville. It's a rock climbing gym, a very large rock climbing and fitness lifestyle gym. So my new fitness feat is going to be there. And in rock climbing, that was something that really helped me both on a physical and mental level. And I'm going to be with a weighted vest, I'm going to be rock climbing the height of Mount Everest. And the goal is within 24 hours. So that's 581 repeats on a 50-foot rock climbing wall within 24 hours is the goal. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, am I going to be able to finish this? I'm going to do my best. Is it pretty ambitious? 100%. But I'm going to train, do my best, and get a lot of people inspired, get Spartan back into it. We'll have a lot of people coming on who will talk about mental health, and a lot of really unique individuals having like a split screen on a live Instagram with Spartan. So as I'm doing the event, you'll have these different people coming on and talking about mental health and other things. And so we want to make it like a really big, all involving, all inclusive kind of event as much as possible.
So where is this going to be broadcast?
Well, it's going to be broadcasted. The goal is, I'm still finalizing it with Spartan, but my last event was live streamed on Spartan's Instagram account. So that's what the original one was. And the goal is having this again, being live streamed on Spartan's Instagram account also. Good outreach, a lot of good people. Everyone's kind of in it together. It's really supportive, really good community.
I just did the math. I just did the math on that. I know
Don't do
you've
the
already
math.
done it. Wow. So you have to do 24 ups and downs per hour, which is one every 2.5 minutes.
Yep. One every 2.5 minutes.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy town. So how do you take this big event? How do you raise money doing this? Do you have is there like a donate now button someplace?
Sure.
Do you do things? So if, because again, we were talking before we recorded, I talked to a lot of people that really are a bit conflicted about charging people to be healthy. Like that's the mindset. Okay. First of all, we got to talk about switching the mindset. That's not what you're charging people for.
Yeah.
However, I could see people really loving the idea of doing these fundraisers or being able to use their success and their, as they get there, right? A reason to be successful, a reason to be well-known, a reason to have made good money so that you could afford to do this and you can pay it forward and have a fundraiser or something like this. So you partner with Spartan. That's fantastic. Not everybody's going to have that connection, but that doesn't mean you can't raise money towards things and really be able to do a lot of good. How do you elicit donations for stuff like that? How do you open that up?
Yeah. But I want to say, first of all, when I was going to partner with Spartan, Joe DeSena, he's the owner of Spartan. I trained one of the largest Spartan groups, and I knew him. We had this little event that we were going to do together, but I literally had to follow up with him so many times on Instagram in different ways for him to say, like, let's give you the right connection with Spartan. So like, this took me a while to set up. Okay. This wasn't like an overnight thing. And I was very persistent again, until I finally got the yes. With this event, the one thing I want to talk about with these different events I'm doing, because we're busy, because we're coaching, a big thing I learned is delegate and automate as much as humanly possible. Whatever you're doing on a repeated level on a day-to-day basis that doesn't necessarily need your full attention, automate 100%. And whatever you can, delegate. Like, so when it comes to raising the money, like, doing a fitness feat was one thing, but raising over $30,000 was like a whole other challenge itself. And then doing them together was like a little ridiculous. But I got a friend involved who's done other charity events, and she really backed me up solid on this occasion. And after this event, we've created a non-for-profit where I'm the face and she is doing all the background work. So it's a team effort, because I just don't have the time to do a lot of that background work, but she's extremely passionate about that. So creating the right partnerships to make these things happen are super, super important, because doing them all yourself is not realistic.
Yeah.
The most amazing things in life are done when we do it together as a team. Kind of the idea we're all in this together. But yeah, so it's kind of sharing the responsibilities with other people, getting other people excited, and finding people who are willing to help you out for a greater cause. And that's how they get done.
Very nice. We do hear that one a lot too. Gosh, this is really cool. You have so many interesting things on the go. We've been talking to you for quite a while, and I feel like we should begin, coming to a close. So I just want to thank you, because we love talking to coaches who are doing interesting things and who built up their practice from the ground up, and watching how it can exponentially grow is just so cool. So thank you for sharing sort of that trajectory. That's awesome. And of course, we'd love for people to be able to follow you and pay attention to your amazing rock climbing effort. That's crazy. And everything else that you're up to. So why don't you start telling us where people can find you?
Yeah. So, one of the places, if you want to follow my fitness feats and, learn about mental health and other areas in that regard, more fitness and mental health, that's on my Instagram, which is wish, WISCH.FIT, fit. Outside of that, my website is Wish Fit. And again, that's WISCHFIT.com. That's all for my coaching. Anything with business goes right there. And then for the non-for-profit, that is fitnessformentalhealth.org is for the non-for-profit.
Amazing. Wow. This is so great. Just acknowledgement to you for, pulling yourself out of a very dark time and having that be your leverage point to doing awesome, amazing, impactful things. It's wonderful.
And there's, one last thing I'd love to kind of leave people with.
Yeah.
And, regardless if you kind of teach this to your clients or to yourself, we all go through challenging times in our career as professionals. And the one thing that's really important for me to share with other people is that regardless of how challenging things get, they may never be perfect, but they can always get better. 100%. They can always improve. And if you keep that in mind, you'll keep moving forward and you'll get past the most challenging of adversities.
Wow. Awesome. What a great note to go out on. Thank you so much, Alex. This has been
my
awesome.
pleasure.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.
Well, if you've been listening at Health Coach Radio, you'll know that we're all about raising the voices of practicing health, fitness, and nutrition coaches, but most importantly, helping to further legitimize this exploding industry. Erin and I have disclosed often that we're on the faculty of the Primal Health Coach Institute, founded by none other than the health and wellness legend Mark Sisson. And we've interviewed dozens of guests from just about every different health coaching program you can think of, and who practice in just about any conceivable way you can think of. But our allegiance is to the health coaching industry in its totality, first and foremost. It's our desire to continuously and unapologetically lift and promote this industry that nudged us to create this podcast for you in the first place. It's this same yearning that encouraged us to take the educational offering at our health coaching school to the next level. We are so proud to offer the Primal Health Coach Level 2 certification course, which, when combined with our primary course, the Primal Health Coach certification course, not only satisfies the educational requirements to sit for the board exam, but is specifically designed to teach advanced coaching mastery. You will work closely with a small class of peers through this 12-week, very intensive, live online classroom experience to learn how to execute a coaching relationship that is truly transformational. You'll learn and practice how to ask powerful questions, what it means to hold space for your clients, but most importantly, how to actually do it. You'll learn about the craft of motivational interviewing and the nuances of habit change, goal setting, and accountability, and how to nurture your client's own inner knowing, their intuition, and their own self-efficacy, so that they will graduate from your care a truly transformed person. You want a big, successful, powerful coaching practice. And maybe you're devouring our episodes looking for the silver bullet that's going to launch your business into the upper echelons. We've said it a million times and we'll say it again. Your coaching skills are what will make or break you and set you apart for success in this field. So if you're looking to level up your coaching skills, and maybe dial up your credential and become a board-eligible health coach, look no further. You can learn more about PHCI's Level 2 program at primalhealthcoach.com/Level 2. But if you would value talking to a real person about your path to being a masterful coach and perhaps a board-certified coach, book some time with me personally. You can access my calendar at primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or just call me. You can reach me at 844-307-7662. Thank you for listening to Health Coach Radio, and I hope I get to talk to you soon.